Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavati Tamastu Mavivishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. Nice to have you all with us. We are reading from the Tales and Parables of Sri Ramakrishna, which also occasionally include various anecdotes from his own life and teachings. And many of these parables you find in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, but there are some that you don't. They were remembered by people that didn't happen to be there when M was recording. So they weren't in the Gospel, but they were stories that Sri Ramakrishna would have told. So we're going to start this evening with the parable called How Sri Chaitanya Attracted the Worldly.
Worldly people will never listen to you if you ask them to renounce everything and devote themselves wholeheartedly to God. Therefore Chaitanya and Nitai, after some deliberation, made an arrangement to attract the worldly. They would say to such persons, "O come, repeat the name of Hari, and you shall have a delicious soup of magar fish and the embrace of a young woman." And many people attracted by the fish and woman would chant the name of God. After tasting a little of the nectar of God's hallowed name, they would soon realize that the fish soup really meant the tears they shed for love of God, and while the young woman signified the earth, and the embrace of the woman meant rolling on the ground in the rapture of divine love.
Yeah, so this sounds actually familiar. You find a lot of times religious organizations have meals and things that they attract people with, but eventually the real attraction, of course, is that they get attracted to the love of God himself. That's, of course, the goal. But sometimes you have to put a little bait out there in order to get people to come. So this is a very frequent ploy. Certainly the Christians did it in India. They offered rice to people that were hungry. Relief workers all over the world do this. There are several other organizations that are very, very good at providing food for people. So this is certainly a legitimate way of attracting people and then allowing them to feel the love of God that comes when they actually eventually get there. Do have to be careful that that doesn't become the be-all and end-all of your spiritual life, though. It's just having various pancake breakfasts and spaghetti cookouts and so forth. So, all right, let's read about the teacher like disciple. Like teacher, like disciple.
So here, this is Sri Ramakrishna speaking. I've seen the Acharya of the Adi Brahma Samaj. I understand that he has married for the second or third time. He has grown up children. Such men are teachers? If they say God is real and all else is illusory, who will believe them? You can very well understand who will be their disciples. Like teacher, like disciple. Even if a sannyasi renounces woman and gold mentally, but lives with them outwardly, he cannot be a teacher of men. People will say that he enjoys molasses secretly. Once Mahendra Kaviraj of Srinti gave 5 rupees to Ramlal. I didn't know about it. When Ramal told me about the money, I asked him, well, for whom was the money given? He said it was for me. Well, at first I thought that I should use it to pay what I owed for my milk. Will you believe me? I'd slept only a little while when I suddenly woke up writhing with pain, as if a cat were scratching my chest. I went to Ramlal and I asked him again, was the money given for your aunt? No, Ramlal answered. Thereupon I said to him, go at once and return the money. Ramlal gave it back the next day.
His aunt was Holy Mother, by the way. And that reference about people will say that he enjoys molasses secretly, that was in reference to the parable we read, maybe a week or two ago, about the physician who was going to prescribe that the patient refrain from eating molasses. But he had some molasses jars in his shelf, so he told the person to come back a few days later when he would give him his prescription, and so then he removed the molasses and then gave the prescription of don't eat molasses. So that was what that reference was. So yes, you expect if someone's going to give you advice that they're following it themselves. Is basically the idea behind this parable. It's very easy to give advice. It's not as easy to follow it. So one needs to see an example of somebody that's actually following it. All right, there's just a very short little thing here before we go on to the fourth book, when all conception of differences vanishes.
Shukadeva went to Janaka for instruction about the knowledge of Brahman. Janaka said to him, you must pay me the Guru's fee beforehand. When you attain the knowledge of Brahman, you won't pay me the fee, because the knower of Brahman sees no difference between the Guru and the disciple.
So if you realize Brahman, then everything is the same. And so, of course, the disciple wouldn't necessarily see any point in paying the Guru, because the Guru and he are the same. So that's a pretty extreme example, however. But it's a humorous one. And of course, that is the goal. It doesn't matter whether you read Shaivite scriptures or Shakta scriptures or Vaishnava scriptures or Advaitic scriptures or all of them. They all want us to realize God. Now, some of them may put it a little bit differently or describe Brahman a little bit differently, but ultimately, Brahman is the ultimate reality in however they're going to describe it, and that is the goal. And in most of those philosophies, if they're Advaitic, then the goal is a oneness where you see everything as one. Many times that's experienced if you're not in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where you literally don't see any differences. It's then seen that perhaps everything is endowed with consciousness or imbued with consciousness or filled with spirit, and so that and that spirit is one everywhere. There's no difference. It's like one underlying current, just like you might see waves on an ocean, but you realize they're all just water. You might have icebergs and waves and all sorts of things on the ocean, but it's still all just water, and you realize that. So we're starting the fourth book of the collection of parables, and this section is called Imperatives, and it's called Go Forward. Swami Swahananda, who was the head of this center for several decades, wrote a couple of books called Go Forward, based on the letters that he had gotten from Swami Saradeshananda. Deshananda, excuse me. All right, go ahead.
Once upon a time, a woodcutter went into a forest to chop wood. There suddenly he met a brahmachari. The holy man said to him, "My good man, go forward." Returning home, the woodcutter asked himself, "Now why did the brahmachari tell me to go forward?" Some time passed. One day he remembered the brahmachari's words. He said to himself, "But today I shall go deeper into the forest." Going deeper into the forest, he discovered innumerable sandalwood trees. He was very happy and returned with cartloads of sandalwood. He sold them in the market, and he became very rich. A few days later, he again remembered the words of the holy man to go forward. So he went deeper into the forest, and he discovered a silver mine near a river. This was beyond his wildest dreams. He dug out silver from the mine and sold it in the market. He got so much money he didn't even know how much he had. In a few days, more passed. And he thought, now, the brahmachari did not ask me to stop at the silver mine. He told me to go forward. So this time he went to the other side of the river, and he found a gold mine. Then he explained, "I just see. This is why he asked me to go forward." But again, a few days afterwards, he went still deeper into the forest, and he found heaps of diamonds and other precious gems. He took these also and became as rich as the god of wealth himself. So whatever you may do, you will find better and better things if only you go forward. You may feel a little ecstasy as the result of japa, but don't conclude from this that you have achieved everything in spiritual life. Work is by no means the goal of life. Go forward, and then you will be able to perform unselfish work.
Right. This is a problem that some people have, is that they get a little ecstasy, or they see a little light, or they have some sort of spiritual experience, and they think, I've reached the goal. But it's really just a signpost that's saying you're going in the right direction. Or they might get some sort of siddhi, some sort of spiritual power. And they think, oh my, this is wonderful. I can read people's minds, or something of that nature. And then they get stuck there. So you don't want to get stuck in these lower types of results. They're simply indications that you're making some progress, but it doesn't mean that you're finished. It would be like learning to play the piano, and because you can play the simplest of pieces, you finished all your studies. But there are many, many more difficult pieces that you can learn as you go along. And so similarly with spiritual life, we want to go forward and realize deeper and deeper truths until we've reached the state of nirvikalpa samadhi. And of course, Brahmananda said that's when spiritual life starts. It's with nirvikalpa samadhi. So definitely don't want to start. I think I got the name of the Swami wrong in the Go Forward book. Is it Prameshananda? Do you remember which Swami the letters were from? Anyway. All right. So, count not leaves, but eat the mangoes. This is another pitfall. So these imperatives are really to avoid these pitfalls. All right, so let's read this parable here.
Two friends went into an orchard. One of them, possessing much worldly wisdom, immediately began to count the mango trees and the number of leaves and mangoes each tree bore. to estimate what might be the approximate value of the whole orchard. His companion, however, went to the owner and made friends with him. Then, quietly going to a tree, he began, with the permission of his host, to pluck the fruits and eat them. Now, whom do you consider to be the wiser of the two? Eat mangoes will satisfy your hunger. What's the good of counting the trees and the leaves and making calculations? The vain man of intellect, busying himself uselessly with finding out the why and wherefore of creation, while the humble man of wisdom makes friends with the Creator and enjoys his gift of supreme bliss.
Reminds me of a joke. There were two people went out into the fields where the sheep were grazing, and they wanted to count the sheep. So they started to count the sheep, and this one person came up with a number first, and the other one was amazed at how fast he did. And he said, "How did you do it so fast?" "Oh, I counted the feet and divided by 4." So if you can get into too many details sometimes. The details are just there to motivate us, but you don't want to get stuck in them. And that's, of course, the difficulty with only worrying about philosophical details. If you worry too much about whether this school of philosophy is better than that school of philosophy, then you're probably spending too much time splitting hairs, you could say. And it's a great way to keep your mind occupied and to get things straight in your head, but it also leads to you feeling like other people are incorrect in their views, and that you're right and they're wrong, and that kind of thing. And so it would be like arguing about how many leaves there are in the mango trees or how many sheep there are in that field. It doesn't really matter. It's enjoying the mangoes or being able to herd the sheep that is the goal there. So we want to make sure that we use all of the studies that we do simply to motivate us to our spiritual practice and not to get too bogged down in splitting hairs. All right. Be drowned! Exclamation point.
Once I said to Narendra, "Look here, my boy, God is the ocean of bliss, and don't you want to plunge into this ocean? Suppose there is a cup of syrup, and you're a fly. Now where will you sit to sip the syrup?" Narendra said, "I'll sit on the edge of the cup and stick my head out to drink it." "And why?" said I. "Why should you sit on the edge?" He replied, "Well, if I go far into the syrup, I shall be drowned and lose my life." Then I said to him, "But my child, there is no such fear in the ocean of Satchidananda. It is the ocean of immortality. By plunging into that ocean, a man does not die. He becomes immortal. Man does not lose his consciousness by being mad about God."
And I think a lot of times our spiritual practice is simply to prepare us for that, because if you get a spiritual experience when you're not prepared for it, it could seem quite terrifying. If you are faced with an infinite ocean of light that's engulfing you, and you haven't studied any scriptures, and you haven't read about great souls having spiritual experiences, that would be a very terrifying experience. Even the great Vivekananda was rather terrified when he got that kind of experience from the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, and cried out, "Oh, I have my family at home," and so forth. And what am I can't function. And on Kalputaru Day, some of the householder disciples that were blessed with great spiritual states realized that they couldn't function on the day-to-day basis if they stayed in that state, and they had to eventually come down from that state. And of course, the great ones like Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Brahmananda, Vivekananda, and many of the other direct disciples, and many of their disciples were able to control that sort of thing because they knew that they couldn't stay in that state. And people like Brahmananda would say, and Sri Ramakrishna, he'd say, I have to come down because in that highest state, I don't, like that earlier parable, I don't see any problems. I don't see your difficulties. Everything is one. And so how can I teach you? So I have to come down to a more relative plane so that I can give you instructions as to how to achieve that on your own. So you have to have some preparation. Now it reminds me too that I think there have been some spiritual leaders that have had some sort of spiritual experience, but like some of these parables are saying, they weren't the ultimate experience, and so they start some sort of sect or cult that is very divisive and very cultish. How else to put it? Where they get disciples and they convince them that this is the only way, and they're the only ones going to some heavenly place or something. And so this is the danger. If somebody has some sort of great spiritual experience, that they may then lead others on thinking that they're the be-all and end-all of spiritual teachers, where they've really just had a taste of it. All right, let's read Stick to Your Own Religion. I almost read that as sticky, thinking of the syrup, but no, it's stick.
Once upon a time, a man wanted to sink a well, and someone advised him to dig in a certain spot, and he did so. But after sinking 15 cubits, when he found no water coming out, he got disgusted. In the meantime, another man came, and laughing at his foolish attempt, advised him to dig in another spot, which he knew to be the best. So the man went and resumed his labor there. This time he went down 20 cubits, but still no water was found. The third man came and asked him to try in another and better place, which he would point out to him. He followed, and a certain spot was shown to him. He went on sinking and sinking till 30 cubits were reached. And in utter disgust, he was going to give up the task, when a fourth man came up to him and said, "My child, you've labored much indeed, but being misdirected, all these labors have been of no use to you. Very well, kindly follow me, and I will take you a spot where if you only touch your spade to the ground, water will flow out in torrents." The temptation was too much for him, and so he followed this fourth man and did according to his advice. He went on digging, expecting every moment the gushing out of water, till he patiently sank 20 cubits. But alas, no water came. Then, utterly discouraged, he gave up the task altogether. By this time, he had sunk 85 cubits. But if he had had the patience and perseverance to sink half the number of cubits in one place, he would surely have been successful. Similarly, men who cannot stick to their religion and always hastily court one religion after another, at last turn out to be atheists in their old age, and they give up religion altogether.
Yeah, so if you've got a tried and true religious path that's created saints, then it's best to stick to it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't study other religions. You can get some hints and ideas about your own religion by looking at other religions. And you might even pick up a new tool to dig your well. But you don't want to keep shifting and changing courses drastically. Of course, I'm afraid this reminds me of a funny movie, Mr. Blanding Builds His Dream House, where they were digging for a well, and they had to dig down about 200 feet before they hit water, which of course cost a fortune. And then the wife decided she wanted a little flower room, so they started digging out a little space for the floor, and water started to gushing up. And so Mr. Blanding asked Mr. DeSanders why they got water over here in 1 foot and it took them 200 feet over there. And he says, well, that's because the water table over here is only 1 foot down and it's 200 feet down over there. So anyway, I always remember that. It was a funny scene. So the well analogy isn't necessarily the best analogy, because you might be digging in a place where there isn't any water table down there. You might end up hitting bedrock before you end up hitting water. That would be following some false religion. So if you're following some cockeyed path that's really not a religion, then you're really just digging in the wrong place. But if there's anything genuine to the religion, perseverance pays off, and it's sticking to it. And it's very easy to get discouraged, because a lot of times it's a lot of hard work, but you have to stick with it. All right, so let's go on to have both your hands free. Yeah, this is a funny parable too.
Once a woman went to see her weaver friend. The weaver, who had been spinning different kinds of silk thread, was very happy to see her friend, and said, "Oh, friend, I can't tell you how happy I am to see you. Let me get you some refreshments." She left the room, and the woman looked at the threads of different colors. She was tempted. She hid a bundle of thread under one arm. The weaver returned presently with the refreshments and began to feed her guests with great enthusiasm. But looking at the thread, she realized that her friend had taken a bundle. Hitting upon a plan to get it back, she said, "Friend, why, it's so long since I have seen you. This is a great day of great joy for me. I feel very much like asking you to dance with me." The friend said, "Oh, sister, I'm feeling very happy too." The two friends began to dance together. But when the weaver saw that her friend danced without raising her hands, she said, "Oh, friend, let us dance with both hands raised, for this is a day of great joy." But the guest pressed one arm to her side and danced, raising only the other arm. The weaver said, "Well, how is this, friend? Why should you dance with only one hand raised? Dance with me, raising both hands. Look at me. See how I dance with both hands raised?" Oh, but the guest still pressed one arm to her side. She danced with the other hand raised and said, "Well, this is all I know of dancing. Don't press your arm to your side. Have both your hands free. Be not afraid of anything, except both the Nietzsche and the Leda, both the absolute and the relative."
Yes, this is the unique message of Sri Ramakrishna in this age. It's more akin to, say, some of the Shaivite and Shakta doctrines of the past. But of course, he often would quote Shankara and Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, but the Advaita Vedanta doesn't really accept both the Nitya and the Leela to the extent that Sri Ramakrishna did. But of course, he not only had an Advaitic teacher in Todupuri, but he also had the Tantric teacher, and so he has both of those aspects in him. And so Sri Ramakrishna was able to definitely dance with both hands raised. And of course, the other message here is that you can't be hiding something worldly. You say that was, hiding those threads is like keeping some sort of worldly attachment that you've secretly hidden under your arm there. And so I would have interpreted it that way rather than the way the commentator interpreted it, that you don't want to have some sort of hidden agenda holding you back from your spiritual practices. All right, let's read about the bell. Let not the bell of bigotry deaden your hearing.
Be not a bigot like Antakarma. There was a man who worshipped Shiva, but he hated all the other devotees, all the other deities. So one day Shiva appeared to him and said, I shall never be pleased with you so long as you hate other gods. But the man was inexorable. After a few days, Shiva again appeared to him. But this time, he appeared as Hara, a form of which one half was Shiva and the other Vishnu. This the man was half pleased and half displeased. He laid offerings on the side representing Shiva, but nothing on that side representing Vishnu. When he offered the burning incense to Shiva, his beloved form of the deity, he was audacious enough to press the nostrils of Vishnu, lest he should inhale the fragrance. Then Shiva said, oh, your bigotry is ineradicable. By assuming this dual aspect, I tried to convince you that all gods and goddesses are but the various aspects of the one being. You have not taken the lesson in good part, and you have to suffer for your bigotry. Long must you suffer for this. The man went away and retired to a village, and he soon developed into a great hater of Vishnu. On coming to know this peculiarity of his, the children of the village began to tease him by uttering the name of Vishnu within his hearing. Vexed by this, the man hung 2 bells on his ears, and when the boys cried out, Vishnu, Vishnu, he would ring the bells violently and make those names inaudible to his ears. And thus he came to be known by the name of Gantakarma, or the bell-eared.
This is a wonderful story about narrow-mindedness. And of course, in our tradition, we have pujas for all the major deities. We don't just have a puja for Shivaratri or a puja for Krishna. We have pujas for both of them, as well as aspects of the Divine Mother. And because, as it points out, they're all aspects of the same one, which was the theme of my first opera, which this gentleman over here was actually in. That was a long time ago, wasn't it, Dean? Yeah, so Claudia and Alexander, a Roman girl and a Greek young man were getting married, and they wanted to know which god they should be invoking for their wedding vows, and so they got into an argument, and they had to discover that they were all aspects of the one. And so, but this is a very common problem. And, especially in village life in India, you might not be exposed to more than one tradition. The whole village might be dedicated to one particular deity or one particular aspect of a particular deity. And certainly in the old days, when communication and travel were much more restricted and less common for people to know about other things. This is all you know, and so this is what you're brought up with. And same thing, of course, in this country, certainly in the pioneer days, you would have known only what your local preacher told you. And so if the local preacher was a particular Christian denomination, that was the only Christian denomination, and all the others were in big trouble. This is really the same problem. But anyone that's read some of the Puranas would certainly realize that these deities actually cooperate many times. They'll get together and decide what they have to do, or one will give a boon, and then the others have to get them out of trouble and that sort of thing. So if one is well read at all, but a lot of people didn't read at all 100, 200 years ago. So this kind of thinking then develops when you don't have enough education. So you see, that's a case where you do want to have enough study and scholarship to know the whole picture of things and not just one narrow little view. All right, see Advaita everywhere or see it nowhere.
Raja was once taught by his guru the sacred doctrine of Advaita, which declares that the whole universe is Brahman. The king was very much pleased with this doctrine. Going in, he said to his queen, "Now there's no distinction between the queen and the queen's maidservant. So the maidservant shall be my queen henceforth." But the queen was thunderstruck at this mad proposal of her lord. She sent for the guru and complained to him in a piteous tone, "My sir, look at the pernicious result of your teachings." Told him what had occurred. The guru consoled the queen and said, "When you serve dinner to the king tonight, have a pot full of cow dung, also served with a dish of rice." So at dinner time, the guru and the king sat down together to eat. Who could imagine the rage of the king when he saw a dish of cow dung served for his meal? The guru, seeing this, calmly interrogated, "Well, your highness, you're well versed in the knowledge of Advaita. Why do you see any distinction between this dung and the rice?" The king became exasperated, exclaimed, "You, who pride yourself to be such a great Advaitin? Eat it, and if you can." The guru said, "Very well," and at once changed himself to a swine and devoured the cow dung with great gusto, and afterwards again assumed his human shape. The king became so ashamed that he never made again his mad proposal to the queen.
Yeah, so that's similar to the story that we read earlier about the man who killed the cow and wanted to say that Indra did it. Everything else he had done, but Indra killed the cow. Similarly, you can take these spiritual teachings to an extreme when you're not ready. The teaching of Advaita is to be kept tucked in the corner of your cloth, but it's not to. If you haven't realized it, you can't practice it to the extreme. This reminds me of another story. This comes from a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, where they weren't sure who was the real prince that was supposed to be the new king of Barataria. And so they decided that the two would rule jointly until they could figure out which one was the real king. And so the servants gave them one helping of tea. And they said, "This is taking oneness a bit too far." They weren't going to settle for only one cup of tea between the two of them. So that's a similar situation. They weren't going to be, they were trying to rule as one, but that didn't mean they only had one appetite. So similarly, we can talk about how everything is Brahman, but in our practical day-to-day experience, everything still is going to have a difference. We can't assume that everything is Brahman to that extent until we have realized it. And even then, if you're going to survive more than 21 days, you're going to have to bring your mind down to the more normal plane. All right, I think we have time for one more. Go beyond knowledge and ignorance. Oh.
Go beyond knowledge and ignorance. Only then can you realize God. To know many things is ignorance. Pride of scholarship is also ignorance. The unwavering conviction that God alone dwells in all beings is jnana, knowledge. To know him intimately is vijnana, a richer knowledge. If a thorn gets into your foot, the second thorn is needed to take it out. But when it is out, both thorns are thrown away. You have to procure the thorn of knowledge to remove the thorn of ignorance. Then you must set aside both knowledge and ignorance, for God is beyond both knowledge and ignorance. Once Lakshmana said to Rama, "Brother, how amazing it is that such a wise man as Vashishta wept bitterly at the death of his son." And Rama said, "Brother, he who has knowledge must also have ignorance. He who has knowledge of one thing must also have knowledge of many things. He who is aware of light is also aware of darkness. Brahman is beyond knowledge and ignorance, virtue and vice, merit and demerit, cleanliness and uncleanliness."
Yeah, again, this illustrates the difficulty of, and this is why Advaita wasn't taught in general, that it was more of a secret teaching, you could say, because people can get the impression that it doesn't matter, nothing matters, everything's the same, so it doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter how I treat people, it doesn't matter whether I do spiritual practices or not, it doesn't matter how I eat, this, of course, is nonsense. If you want to be healthy, you still have to eat healthy food. If you want to develop spiritually, you have to do spiritual practices. You can't just say, "Oh, well, everything is Brahman," and go on. You have to realize everything is Brahman. And then, as we said previously, you have to, in order to survive in the relative plane, you have to still come back down to the relative plane, and you're still going to see differences. The realization that everything is Brahman still doesn't allow you to survive on the relative plane. So you have to, as we often heard say of the avatars, they have to take on a bit of ignorance. They have to take on a bit of karma in order to have a body at all, so that they can do the Leela, do the divine Leela. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be able to stay here. And so, Holy Mother, of course, and Sri Ramakrishna both, they had times when they knew perfectly well who they were, and but they had to sometimes come down from that state so that they could function in the relative plane. So that's concludes our parables for this evening, and we can continue next week with Beware.
No class next week.
Oh, no class. Oh, that's right. No class next week, because we have some special functions which we hope that you will attend, either in person or online. On Saturday, there will be a celebration of the 125th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda's visit to Southern California, and then on Sunday at Trabuco, we'll be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Trabuco Monastery. There will still be a lecture here in Hollywood on that day as well. So if you don't want to travel to Orange County, you can enjoy the lecture here in Hollywood. I think it's Veda Rupanand, as I remember. But we have all sorts of things for you to do, and hope that you will enjoy them. So yes, so we're skipping the class next Friday because we'll have many visiting swamis and pravrajakas from the other centers, because we're giving vows to 2 people that morning, and so we will not be giving the class in the evening. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for reminding me of that.